Well, thank you and welcome for coming. Tonight's Complete Streets Prioritization Planning Forum. It's somewhat of a mouthful. My name is Jesse Stedman. I'm the town planner here in Stow. And we're working tonight with our consultants on the project, Howard Stein and Hudson, and several of the associates with them will be up talking and working with us tonight too. So we'll just get going here. What I wanted to do first is just kind of give you an idea of what tonight looks like, in case you didn't see the agenda up front. We're going to go quickly over how we got to this point. I think it's just important to hit the background for a minute. And then we're going to talk about the kinds of things that people have already been telling us about the safety network and the street network here in Stow, what it's like to be a bike rider, a pedestrian, or somebody driving. And so we'll go through that. We've got some interesting data and a lot of comments that we've received, and we're really happy that so many people took part on this project online. And then we're going to talk about actual experiences that different folks have from different neighborhoods. We'll get a chance to talk to one another. And the purpose will be to gather as much data as we can at this stage in the project, and that'll make more sense once I give you a little bit of overview here. So this Complete Streets project, the prioritization planning effort, this all started a couple of years ago when we formed a Complete Streets policy in Stow. And for those who may not have been involved or don't quite remember, basically what that said is that the town is going to commit to making sure that we think about bike and pedestrian and basically all modes of transportation when we update our streets and when we do new things around the transportation network. And so we were making a commitment, and that part of that leads to where we are right now in the process. The next year we got involved in the Baker administration's community compact. It was just another way to tell the state, hey, we're serious about this, we want to move forward, we basically want to be able to get further funding and further technical assistance to get these things done. And then the last thing that happened was back in, at the last town meeting, we've got funding approved to do this project. And so it's reimbursable funding. It was a great deal. We're super excited to have Howard Stein Hudson be able to help us get here. And this is the part that is the prioritization plan. So basically with the program, we'll have a little description of the program in a minute, but we wanted to be able to come up with a way for the town to understand and prioritize what are the most important places in town that we need to start thinking about for upgrades to our street network. So in order to do good planning, we really needed to start with a lot of the comments coming from you folks and be able to put that into an actionable plan. And so that's what tonight is really all about. I think I just turned this off. There we go. So I'm going to turn it over to Karen Kelleher. She's a member of the Complete Streets Committee here in town, just to talk a little bit about goals, and then we'll just dive right in.
Okay, so this will be short and sweet. The committee's been meeting not very long, but one of the first things we did was adopt some planning goals. And the first one was to not only improve the streets for vehicular transportation, but pedestrian and bike traffic, which is a real challenge in many areas of town. The next was to improve local connectivity between key destinations, for walking and biking to retail areas, recreation areas, town conservation lands, farms and orchards, or whatever. One of the key things in the study is to consider the cost effectiveness, including availability of funds required for maintenance versus the value added for the feasibility, and utilizing the design improvements that are consistent with rural character. I know this is a common theme in any of our planning efforts in Stow, is to maintain the rural character, not change, to citify the town. So these goals are not set in stone. This is just the beginning of this work in process. The plan will not be created in a vacuum, where public input is very important. So we need to hear your input this evening and moving forward. Please attend our public meetings that we have. I'm not sure if we have a regular agenda item, but they'll be posted on the website, and please, your participation is very important. So I'll turn things over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth Flanagan from Howard Stein and Hudson.
Great. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, my name is Elizabeth Flanagan with Howard Stein Hudson. I'm here with Lou Rubito from Howard Stein Hudson, who's our Complete Streets manager, as well as Casey Oy, who's a transportation planner as well. And so we've been working with the town of Stow and the Complete Streets Committee to help with the development of a prioritization plan. So what I want to quickly do is walk everyone through first, if you're not familiar with the phrase, what are complete streets? What is this funding program? What are we doing? And then after that, we'll go through some of the initial existing conditions findings that we've already come up with. And then we're going to open it up to some breakout groups. We really want to treat tonight as a data collection effort. So any of the existing conditions that you see, this is what we have gotten from data. We really want to flesh this out with your experiences, what you experience as residents of Stow, so that we can build a complete streets prioritization plan that really speaks to the issues that you see every day. So first of all, what is a complete street? Complete streets are those that provide safe and accessible options for all travel modes and for users of all different ages and abilities. So with that, they have many different benefits. First and foremost, safety. We want to ensure that people can get around walking, biking, using transit, and driving in a way that is safe and in a way that encourages people to use modes that most fit their lifestyle. We want to encourage people to be walking and biking, which has health benefits, accessibility benefits. We want to make sure that we're serving those with disabilities, the elderly, children. There's also equity benefits and economic benefits. These have been shown through studies. The more people are out and about and getting out of their cars, the better it is for the local economy. So there are a whole lot of benefits to treating your streets as complete streets, to really promoting a variety of different modes and making sure that everyone can get around in the way that best suits them. And of course, we want to make sure that we're planning with an aim to serve the elderly, children, those with disabilities, and in an equitable approach, so serving communities that are low income or minority or might not have access to a vehicle. The Complete Streets funding program that we are participating in right now on behalf of your town is through MassDOT. And so this program was released in 2016. It was initially a $12.5 million worth of funding from casino funds, which has been appropriated, and then an additional $50 million that will cover 2017 to 2021 through the CIP, the Capital Investment Plan. So far, in the 2 years that this program has been up and running, 145 municipalities have passed their policies. So anytime that a city passes a policy, it gets graded by MassDOT, and if it scores above an 80, it passes, and then that town can move on into the prioritization plan, which is the phase that we're at right now. 90 municipalities have submitted prioritization plans, and 48 projects have been approved for construction. And so these towns have taken projects through the prioritization plan. They've submitted for the actual construction funding. They've been granted the funding, and now they're putting those projects in the ground. So it's really neat to see the timeline of this and how towns are really moving forward in terms of getting things through construction and out for people to use. So these are just to visualize where these towns are that have done these things. So the top is all of the towns that have, towns and municipalities that have participated in Tier 2, which is the prioritization plan. And then in the orange at the bottom, those are where the actual projects are already being implemented. So in terms of the money aspect of this, for assistance with the prioritization plan, municipalities can be granted up to $50,000 of reimbursable assistance. And then for construction, up to $400,000 worth of funding that is reimbursable. So this can be a combination of different projects, so smaller scale projects that add up to $400,000. It can be one project that's $400,000, or it can be a project that exceeds this if it is coupled with other sources of funding, like Chapter 90 or other sources that the town is ready to commit to. One thing to note is that design is not an eligible expense. So what that means is that projects, if you want to move them forward quickly through the prioritization plan into Tier 3, which is the construction funding phase, they need to be low design or already designed, so something that was proposed and then put on the shelf because funding wasn't available. Those kind of projects will move forward, or the municipality will have to front the cost of the design effort. So as we mentioned, Tier 1 is the policy development portion of the program, which you have already passed. We are now in Tier 2, which is the prioritization plan development. So this is where we'll come up with a list of projects based heavily on the community input that we're getting from you all. And then we'll prioritize those projects, which I'll get into a bit more in depth. That prioritization plan is submitted to MassDOT. Once MassDOT looks at that prioritization plan and approves it, then you can submit your top projects for Tier 3 construction funding. And at that point, you can be awarded the amount of money up to $400,000 for that year's worth of Tier 3 construction. So we have already looked at a lot of plans, resources that are out there. We've done data collection to get into the existing conditions. Tonight we're here to gather more input from you. Hopefully many of you have already seen the Wiki Map, which I will show you. But this is an online tool where we've been gathering input from people, getting your comments. We've been consolidating all of those to get a sense of where the problem areas are in town, what visions people have. So we want to continue that discussion tonight once we get into the breakout groups. Once we have finalized that portion of the process, we'll work with the town to come up with a list of projects that we think address the issues that have been identified through the existing conditions analysis as well as your comments. Once we've gone through that process, they will all be prioritized based on how important the project is, what level of service it can provide, any restrictions, as well as how much it contributes to a variety of variables such as connectivity, equity, does it serve a school or a senior center, all of these different considerations that we want to take into account. And then we will go ahead and submit the prioritization plan. So this brings us to the existing conditions portion. And I already had a conversation with someone tonight. We've done existing conditions analysis based on data that we've collected. And what we want to do tonight is both show that to you to get your juices flowing when we're talking about where we can see improvements in town for complete streets. But we also want to do a truth test of these results with you, get your experiences, get your feedback. You're going to help us finalize this analysis and really tweak it and make it something that speaks to you. So the first thing that we have up here is a map of latent demand to walking points of interest. So what is latent demand? This is a measure that we use in transportation planning a lot when we're talking about pedestrians and cyclists. When we talk about cars, the roadway infrastructure is already there. So we can see how many people are using the road by counting them. A lot of times, if there isn't a sidewalk or there isn't a bike lane, people who are walking and biking will choose not to take those routes, even though there might be destinations that they want to get to or need to get to. So they'll either drive a car when they would prefer to walk, or they'll take a roundabout route, or they'll do something else. So this captures the amount of traffic that we could expect based on the number of destinations that we have. So in the blue, that's Lower Village. There's a lot of destinations there. There's the Shaws. There's a lot of shopping opportunities. And then in the center of the map, where it's more of an orangey pink, that's the town center. So you have your town hall, the school, the library, a lot of other walking destinations. So this kind of analysis helps us determine which roadway links would best support connecting the pedestrian network. Where can we best serve pedestrians? Where can we prioritize sidewalk improvements, crosswalk improvements, the pedestrian network?
Yeah, so was that based on any data about how many people living in those streets actually want to bike or walk, or is it just...
So this is purely just looking at the destinations. So we didn't do a survey. That is another approach to doing this type of analysis. This is really just showing you the number of destinations that you can reach by using a given roadway segment.
That seems like that's kind of a big assumption.
Well, one thing that we want to take into account is that a mode shift is beneficial. If we can help get people walking and biking, again, that has a lot of safety, accessibility, health, environmental benefits. Yes, it might be an assumption, but if we're going to prioritize sidewalk linkages, this is one of the criteria that we consider. How useful would that linkage be?
So you're trying to push people into doing things they don't currently want to do.
This is one of many variables that we're going to consider. So moving on to level of comfort, this is also something that we look at. When we prioritize projects through this list, that brings up a great point. We're not doing this based on any one variable. We're going to work with the town to come up with what are the key criteria that should be prioritized. And then we do sort of a matrix of all these different variables. How well does it contribute to connectivity? How well does it contribute to safety? Does it connect you to key destinations? How many community comments did we get about an improvement in this location? So we really combine a lot of different elements to make sure that we're not basing it all on just one aspect of analysis. So we went through and looked at sidewalks throughout the town and just did a very basic assessment of the condition of the sidewalk to get a sense of where conditions are good, fair, poor. One of the things that we consider when we're talking about sidewalk condition are pinch points, particularly whether someone in a wheelchair could get through. Is it at least 3 feet wide for the full extent? Is there a utility pole right in the middle of it that really makes it hard to get through? So this gives us some indication of not only what the condition of the sidewalks are, but where are the gaps. And so when we think about demand as well as gaps, we can start to get a picture of where are improvements needed, what kind of improvements are needed. So similarly, we did the same thing with cycling. With cycling, you have a larger area that you can access by bike. So you'll notice that the highest area of potential demand shifts over to the east, more towards the town center, because those segments allow you to reach more destinations by bike because you can go a further distance. Similarly, we did a bicycle level of comfort. Great Road, Hudson Road, South Acton Road, and Gleasondale Road were some of the key roads that are uncomfortable for cycling. Primarily, they are narrow, there's not much shoulder, they're often windy, and the sight lines aren't great. So this is something that we definitely want to consider. You'll see a lot of green roads. Those are considered high comfort. That's based on the function, the classification of the road, whether it's local, whether it's residential. It takes into account speed and volume. But again, we want to get your sense of where are other problem areas that maybe we didn't identify so that we can really hone in on problem issues. We also looked at bicycle crashes from 2014 to 2016. And so 3 out of 4 happened on Great Road at different locations. And I have the locations listed up at the top. So the 4th one was at Sudbury and Main Street. We also just want to be conscious of persons with disabilities. So this is just the percentage of persons with disabilities in different census tracts. Of course, we also want to look at assisted living facilities, senior centers. We considered environmental justice as well. There were not any census tracts identified in Stow. And of course, one of the reasons we want to consider persons with disabilities is because improvements such as curb ramps have a great benefit for people who are in wheelchairs or use walkers or need more time to cross the road. Signal timing can also be a great benefit for people who take a little longer to cross the road. So improvements like that, we want to be conscious of the areas where those would have the most benefit. So this brings us to the Wiki Map. Again, hopefully a lot of you have already seen this and commented on it. If you haven't, I believe you will have the opportunity to do that. If not, you can always go home and just access it. If you Google Wiki Mapping Complete Streets Stow, you should be able to find it pretty easily. This allows you to add points. These are points that we already had. This is in the Lower Village. And you can add what type of mode you're talking about. You can add a comment. You can agree or disagree with someone else's comment. And this really helps us dig into what are the types of issues that we're identifying. So already we have received, this was actually as of 2.5 weeks ago when we pulled the data. So we'll be doing this again after this meeting when people have had another chance to go online. But we already had 181 responses. And within those 181 responses, 359 issues or opportunities were identified. So that's a pretty hefty amount of data to work with. The top issues that were filled out within the survey that you can do were high vehicle speeds, missing or obstructed sidewalks, high vehicular volumes, and dangerous or difficult crossings. So I'm going to go through some heat maps just of those top couple categories, so we can look at some of the hot spots for those. These are high vehicular speeds, and you can see the red areas are where the most comments were located. So the southern portion of Gleasondale Road, Great Road had quite a few comments, as well as South Acton Road and Boxborough Road. These are missing or obstructed sidewalk comments. So Hudson Road had quite a few comments spread out all along the corridor, and quite a few comments as well in the Lower Village. And we had a lot of comments about that, about people wanting connectivity to the Shaws, to Maynard, and throughout that whole area. And then high vehicular volumes. Town Center was actually kind of the crux of this issue. And then you can see the comments spread throughout town. But again, Gleasondale Road, Boxborough Road, and Great Road. And then dangerous or difficult crossings, Town Center, Gleasondale Road, Lower Village. So you're seeing some trends here, some problem areas that keep coming up for a range of different issues. So these will be areas that we'll definitely want to dig into and look into opportunities. This is just to give you a sense of all the different comments that we got. The larger the dot, the more agreeing comments it had on that comment. So we had quite a lot of input. Some of the top comments were pedestrian safety and accessibility improvements along Hudson Road, pedestrian connections through the Lower Village, pedestrian and bicycle safety improvements and access on Red Acre Road, and access points to the conservation areas, as well as to the Lower Village. Something that came up a few times was increasing wayfinding and access points to trails. And then finally, safe cycling connections to Maynard and Hudson, either via the roadway or via rail trail. So tonight we're going to go into the breakout groups. Before that, I do quickly want to just show you a couple key points. So again, we're building a list of projects that will be prioritized on a number of different criteria that we're working with the town to develop. These will be the projects that are submitted to MassDOT. Any project that you want to submit to pursue for construction has to be on the prioritization list to move forward. So we really want to make the prioritization list as comprehensive as we can so that you have the full range of options when you want to apply for construction funding. We will prioritize the list, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go through and construct things in the order of the list. MassDOT wanted to make sure that this process worked with municipalities. So if you have an opportunity, if you're doing a paving project, say, oh, well, priority number 5 actually fits in with that. Let's jump ahead down the list and go to that project first. That's totally fine. The prioritization plan is to help you prioritize and guide your plan as you go through these projects and to help you justify those projects to MassDOT when you're going into the competitive Tier 3 funding application process. As we discussed, projects for Tier 3 need to be little or low design, or design has to be covered by the municipality. It's not covered within the project. Currently, funds cannot be used on state-owned roads. The good news for Stow is that you have very few state-owned roads. It's just the bridges as far as I know. So, yeah. So just the bridges are areas that are not applicable for this funding, but all of your roads are town-owned. So that's awesome. That gives us a lot of free range with what we can do. And I will say that's not always the case with other towns. There may be a permitting process to allow this in the future, but again, this isn't such a priority for Stow as you guys own most of your roadways. And so the locations where DOT does own the roadway are the bridges over Minister's Pond on Great Road, Elizabeth Brook on Great Road, Elizabeth Brook on Gleasondale Road, and Assabet River on Gleasondale Road. And so then once we've done the prioritization plan, again, we will move on and apply for construction funding. This is just to give you a sense of what can be done. We worked with the town Lancaster, and their prioritization plan was a series of quite a long list of small projects. So they had a lot of little small projects, and they bundled them all together and applied for Tier 3 construction funding, which they were granted. And so they're connecting their sidewalk network all down their main street, improving their curb ramps, improving their crosswalks. This bottom crosswalk is actually at an assisted living facility, so they're improving that. And this Locust Map just shows you all the different locations where they're doing projects. They're doing a really large breadth of projects, all within the $400,000 worth of funding. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do. So with that, I think we will move on to the breakout groups. And there's my contact information. Do we have time for questions? Yeah. So currently it's a 5-year program, and Lou, I don't know if you want to speak to this. Lou was very involved with putting together this funding program actually when he was at the DOT. But currently it's a 5-year program. We've gone through 1 year already, so we're within the 2nd year of competitive funding. It looks like there will be efforts made to extend the program into the future. So
I think Liz pretty much covered it all, but I know that the DOT's excited about the program, as is the State House. It's received a lot of support from the Lieutenant Governor, the Governor's office. So I see this program continuing for a while.
if there are no more questions, do you want to talk about the breakout groups? Great.
I know we went over, a lot of jargony stuff. I do the policy stuff all day. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has after this or tonight. Happy to talk about a lot of that stuff. I know you saw a lot of maps. You saw a lot of data. There's probably some things on the maps that you don't agree with or that you don't quite understand, and that's the whole nature of a map. It takes good data, so that's why we're here tonight. We're going to make the maps better. We're going to try to understand this prioritization plan as best we can. So that's why we left a lot of time tonight to really be able to talk with one another. So I know a lot of people, we had the 181 responses, people were online, may have been doing this at home. What I really wanted to see was people talk to some of their neighbors and bounce some of these ideas off. Some of those things that maybe you have seen, I'm curious to see how somebody down the street has the same perspective. How is it a little bit different? And certainly, how is it different across neighborhoods? So that's what we're going to try to get to tonight. So I see a fair amount of people that I don't know, which is always great, and some familiar faces. So I think we hopefully have a pretty good spread from around town. The way that we'd like to get this to work is that folks who have a particular neighborhood that they're interested in kind of talking about and hearing about, we can separate into some of the tables here. And so the way we often do it in Stow, and I think, do we have a slide that has the whole thing? So let me pull this up. This will make more sense. But Stow breaks out into quadrants pretty easily. Here we go. So you've got Gleasondale Road that basically intersects up with West Acton Road. That's a pretty good north to south line. And then, of course, Route 117. To the best we can, this doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll try to separate out. If your neighborhood is in Group 4, we'll get you situated at a table at Group 4. We'll be able to talk to some of the neighbors, get some of the things on paper, and then I'd like to be able to kind of move around and see, how do things stack up in other neighborhoods. So that is the plan. We also have Town Center and Lower Village. I know there was a lot of interest in there. Are there folks here that are interested in talking about Lower Village? And we've got a few hands, so we'll definitely include that table. How about Town Center? Just so I have an idea. Town Center, we'll fold that into one of the groups here, so we'll get everybody's input. Okay. So we're going to have the folks who would like to talk about Lower Village will start over here. And we have got, oh boy, we've got quadrant, group number 3 would be down in here. This would be Sudbury Road, Lake Boone part of town. And we've got group number 4 over here. This is southwest Stow. So it's a big place. So let's get moving here and we'll get situated. Yep.
Can you just make it clear, if you
Yep.
use Westdale Road as a boundary,
What side of the road do you live on?
where do Westdale go?
Yeah. So if you're living in Gleasondale, you're interested in Gleasondale, let's go to group 3.